Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to Raw Conversations. We are so excited about you being here with us on tonight. We are grateful, we are thankful that you have taken the time to come out and share. I am overly excited because we have an amazing panel who's going to be with us on tonight. So we want you to go ahead and hit that watch, hit that like, share it, start a watch party because tonight we're talking to Black men having a conversation on racism in America. So I want you to help me, first of all, to welcome my co-host for this special edition of Conversations, Pastor Anthony Reed.
God bless you. We're glad to be here with you tonight. Thank you for how you tapped in and supporting the last few weeks.
And tonight, our first panelist that we're going to bring on tonight is a gentleman by the name of Travis Bolden. Travis, we're so glad that he's able to join us on tonight. Travis is an educator. He's an entrepreneur from the Eastern Shore of Maryland. He received his Bachelor of Science in History from Frostburg State University. He continued his studies as we see him tonight. He continued his studies to receive a certificate in global education, a MAT in teaching secondary social studies, a MED, I know that's right, in teacher leadership, and an MA in American history. For the past 16 years, Travis has worked as a teacher, principal, and district leader in urban schools while successfully launching 2 businesses to increase equality and access for all. So, Travis, we thank you for being tonight. Can you tell us why did you accept the invitation to be here on tonight?
First of all, good evening, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here. I love the work that you are doing, and I'm always glad to be networking with influential people in the community who are all about having those hard and critical conversations for change. So with that being said, I accepted the invitation to be here for the same exact reason. As a social justice advocate and a community advocate, we have to have these conversations, these very real conversations about what it takes to not only move past traumas, but to process traumas and to make sure that we have hope and light for everyone, especially people who look like us moving forward.
Good evening.
For me, all to great Bill. You're going to know Mr. Brown. You're going to know his work. I just feel like I want to share with you how godly proud I am of this young man who does a lot of work behind the scenes, supporting his community. He is an alumnus of Morgan State University. He is an educator. He follows even in the footsteps of his mom, who's an educator, his father, and being a community advocate. And so we just really value him. We value the work that he's doing. We value his passion. It's nothing for him to shoot me a text to encourage me every Sunday. And he does that to a lot of people, just letting us know that we're on his heart and on his mind. So we thank him and we appreciate his time on tonight. So Mr. Brown, tell us, why did you accept this invitation?
Good evening, everybody. Just like you said, I like to do stuff behind the scenes. I stay active, but I don't need to be in the forefront. But having a space where you can have tough conversations is much needed, so especially for Black males, because most often the only spaces that we have is barbershop and every so often gatherings amongst each other. But to be in a position like right now to have conversations dealing with racism is very much needed.
We thank you for your time. God bless you on tonight. On tonight, we also have the esteemed privilege to bring onto this panel. We're so excited to have Minister Christian Reeves with us. He is a rising thought leader, a people builder, having served as an associate pastor and a professional developer for multiple years. It is Christian's passion to influence community, industry, and religious leaders through training, social media content, and conversation. We welcome you tonight, man of God. We thank you, and we want to ask you the same question. Tell us, why did you accept?
Thank you, Lady Kia and Pastor Reed. I'm so glad to share in this aggregation of incredible gentlemen. So I'm part of this conversation tonight because I believe that storylines have the ability to reach people's hearts. And so I think it's imperative every opportunity as a Black man to share my story, to share the emotions that come along with the story. I think that has the ability to shift us into the direction in which we desire to be as a people. So I'm happy to be here tonight. I'm happy to share with these gentlemen, and I'm looking forward to some great conversation that brings healing and direction to the land.
We welcome you and thank you once again. And our last finalist on tonight, it is an honor and a privilege to bring this wisdom. And I apologize, I was unable to actually open his bio, but I know this man. He is a supporter of his community. He is a community advocate. He is one who has many years of social justice promotion and community advocacy under his belt. I had the honor of connecting with him. He is the president of the Kennard Alumni Association, which is they are a nonprofit group who have taken on the responsibility to preserve the legacy of the only secondary African American house in Queen Anne's County. They are responsible for continuing to share the story of Lucretia Kennard and what the African American community has been able to do. And for each of these young men, when they talk tonight, I pray that they all will have an opportunity to share a little bit more about what they have done besides the brief bio that I have brought to you today. So please welcome Mr. Washington. I will do the same thing, Mr. Clayton. Did you accept the invitation to come on tonight?
Hello, folks. Number one, my daughter's putting some light on me so you can see me. Number one. The other thing is, you called and you asked me. That's probably the biggest reason I accepted to be here. But beyond that, with this flock of young activists that are with me tonight, I hope to offer some perspective of somebody that's lived through some of the same things at another time. I'm going to have some problems with when I'm on oxygen, but I felt it important to be here and offer my perspective and the passion that I have for young people and caring for them. I spent 25 years mentoring young men who've had problems with alcoholism and drug addiction. And I think it's important to know that they have options, especially today with our young people. So I'm glad to be here. And hopefully I'll say something that somebody might use.
God glory and give God honor for you. And we thank you. And we're going to bring all of our panelists on and we're going to get this conversation started. So once again, we welcome you to RAAW Conversations. Tonight, we are here with the men, and my co-host is going to start off with our first question on tonight to get us started.
Amen. All right. RAAW Conversations, the men edition. I'm here with Lady Kia Reed, who's been doing a phenomenal job with these conversations and throughout our community. So we're grateful for the opportunity just to sit next to her tonight and to share from a male perspective. The question we have here is, what's the greatest obstacle you had to overcome as it relates to fighting microaggressions. These equal pay, advancement opportunities, education, housing, diversity, reprimands, generational disparities, etc. And how did you overcome this obstacle?
And so on tonight, and listening to question two, I'd like to start the conversation off with Travis. Can you speak to that? Share with us what has been some of the obstacles that you have faced, and then what are some things you've been able to do to overcome that?
Well, thank you. There are so many obstacles, and as an urban school, an urban educator that has worked in multiple different, thank you, August, multiple different school systems. There are so many things people who look like me experience as well. I'm going to pause on that, so hopefully more people knows. I want to speak about one that may be a less of a common conversation for Black men, and that's the generational disparities among even class. Most of us already know that in America, the achievement gap is across the lines of race and class, and often we often have the race factor for equality. No Child Left Behind, making sure that our schools are funded well, making sure that community organizations are doing the work there. But it's very rare to actually focus on the generational wealth gap. So
Right.
I'm very intentional with that myself. My youngest son is 16. So for me, it's been really building that foundation in terms of savings. And I know that sounds like a bland word that we often hear, but no, savings, like starting extremely young, being very financially aware of the cost of living, the cost to gain privilege, because privilege is not just a thing based on race, it's on the class you have. So really investing a lot of time in creating those CDs to build interest, to build your own wealth, even if it's a one small brick at a time, so that as our kids become adults, they are released into the world, they have those advantages that I certainly did not have growing up. And shout out to my parents who certainly did the best they could, but it doesn't mean is my ceiling. I wanted more for my kids. My parents wanted more for me and more for my kids. So I have been very intentional about building wealth from my young 20s, so that not only me, but my kids and my kids' kids are in a situation where they have access, or people respond to who they are based on the class that they're actually in. Now, of course, I don't advocate for that and I don't call it right, but I am fully aware of these systems and structures of where we are and what class and money actually means in America.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Wonderful, brother.
That's good stuff. And I love the twist and how you begin to look at that when you look at disparities, and you brought in the class and classism, which I think is important. And I don't know where this conversation is going to go, but even right within ourselves, when we're talking about building community and supporting one another, we don't want to forget that as well. And even colorism is something that we just might talk on tonight. Any gentlemen want to jump on that?
Yeah, I will definitely. I want to jump in that, because when we talk about microaggression, I think that the belief that we have to code switch becomes a very heavy thing. So professionally, I am a career and professional developer, right? So I teach young adults how to act within professionalism. And so there's this idea that because I'm Black, the big thing right now, you hear about Karen, right? So I've got to make myself sound a certain way. I have to come and hello, everyone. My name's Christian Reeves. There's this thought that my hair has to be a certain way, even throughout this quarantine, because, we have the conversation and the huge focus now on what's going on amongst social justice, but we've been in a quarantine, and I have to find partnerships, and I'm dealing with CEOs and HR managers and all of these things, and I didn't have a haircut for quite an amount of time, and like many of you, was on Zoom every day in these meetings, And, you know, I've had people say, well, Christian, I didn't know your hair could get that long. Well, what do you mean by that? You know,
Right.
I don't know what you're saying to me, but these are real things. And so that idea that you have to code switch, is my beard too long? There are always these ideas. When I step on the elevator in my office, do I have to smile? How do I de-arm and cause people not to
Wow.
feel, you know, as if I'm a predator, as we've been, you know, a thug. These words that are out here, how do I soften myself so I'm not this black man that's in this space? Those are real things, real issues, and it's a constant fight.
Wow. Wow. You guys are, I'm just facilitating. I want to lend this to each of you to be able to take this. Oh my goodness, so much that you talked about, de-arming so that I don't appear, look threatening. Wow. Wow. Who wants to jump in here? Mr. Clayton, can you jump in?
Yes, I can. The question was about obstacles we've had to overcome, and basically, I'm of a different generation, so the obstacles were a little bit different. As far as people say we've come, some of them unfortunately still the same. The biggest obstacle I guess I had to overcome when I was coming along and after school and business was respect or the lack of it, disrespect. And the bar was always put too low for us, I think.
Ah.
People always thought that if we were only able to do a certain amount, and at that point, we always had to prove to them that we could do more for them to give us more.
Wow.
So what I'm saying today is, I don't think it's as bad as it was when I started, but I see it more and more that if we allow the bar to be set low, that's all people will expect of us.
That's
And
right.
I think what we have to do is show them that doesn't have to be a bar at all. Okay, we set the standard by how we live and what we do, and let other people come up to that instead of going down to where they are.
Ah, that's good stuff.
I overcame that basically by hard work and realizing that there was nothing that could stop me. I lived in the world for a long time. And at that point, I lived by the world standards for a lot of that. And it took me until I got to say it, I found the Lord. And I found that there were things that were more important than attaining wealth. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but there's some other things that have to go along with that in order to be able to be an example in this world, to be able to let other young men know that what you achieved in a way that was responsible. So I think that's what the example we have to set. And I'm glad to see these 3 young men sitting here. And your husband is one, 4 young men and 1 young lady. You know how I feel about you. We're now passing the mantle, so to speak. Okay, so what I want you to understand is that even though I still have more to do, and I'll do whatever God allows me to do. Okay, I'm going to depend on you to let those that come after you know that there is a standard, and you are it.
Wow.
Amen.
That's good stuff, Mr. Washington. I like what you said about the bar being low and saying there in this hour, there really is no bar. I was raised from a parent that came out of the post-civil rights movement, or just the transition, and we were told what their parents had told them: you got to work twice as hard just to be accepted.
And thought that was good.
But I really like what you said about no bars, because when President Obama got to the White House, whether how he got there or what he did while he was there, we were preparing for baptism at church, and so we had the baptism message. But when he got elected, it just shifted everything. Just as things that are happening now are shifting. The way we are just looking at life, period, whether it be COVID-19 or the racial injustices. I mean, in our little country town, they've had like 6 rallies and 3 more planned this week. But that when I saw President Obama become elected, my sermon that Sunday, and I don't remember them all, but I remember that one. It was, "Oh, you are an inexcusable old man," and my topic at the baptism was, "Black man, what's your excuse?" Because as you said, there are no bars. That there is no excuse. If one of us could make it, I believe all of us can make it. And now I understand the disparities. I understand, the injustices that are there. But as you said, hard work. I think it removes a lot of the excuses and the barriers that are there. And if you got the right mindset, like Travis was saying, starting them young. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but there are some things out there that I believe are attainable. And so this is a very real conversation, but on the other side of it is, we can make it if we focus. We can do like you said, and we definitely need to be grounded spiritually. So I appreciate uh, that comment, sir.
Absolutely. Mr. Brown, jump in.
Okay, being the one of the militant ones, it was being a blackface and white, and throughout education, because that's pretty much my main form, education. So I had to deal with maneuvering, learning the system, and fighting against that, and not accepting that you have to conform. You can be your authentic self in any space that you operate in, and that will actually garner the respect of others, so that you don't have to deal with the microaggressions. Because even when you're dealing with young people, you have to teach them the microaggressions that are surrounding them, because it'd be the little slightest things that they're unconscious about that can easily deter them and take them away from where they're going. So you have to address them. I learned that as a young age, and growing up, and as I maneuver in the education field, I continue to move in that space. Like, I'm going to be 100% myself. I don't care what space it is. You're going to have to deal with me as a Black man, as I was brought into this world. There's no exceptions to the rule.
That, oh my God, that is such an awesome segue, because even as you guys were talking and sharing how you walked, that is one of the questions that I had generated, is in talking with, like Mr. Clayton said, he came from a different generation, and talking with this generation, my question to you guys, which you've answered, was going to be, what do we tell the young people who are saying, no, grandmama, we're not like that. We're tired of the conformity. How do we maneuver? And so I think that's a fair conversation. And I want some of you guys, because everybody's taking it from a different norm, because I will be very honest with you. I'm the first one that will share and say to them, I appreciate that, but until you really have power, or you're the owner of the company, then you really can't. So help that young person who is trying to work their way. I'm going to take this. This is probably going to shift. Who defines what Black is? That is something that I've been wanting to ask us, because even as a female, and walking into certain spaces, you call someone, oh, you talking white. Is it possible to have a professional voice and my authentic voice? And I say that because, let's say if I spoke 2 languages, in the space that I'm in, I may have to speak English, but at home I get to speak Russian, or I get to speak Spanish. And that's how I've always viewed it when presenting it to young people. And sometimes they kick back and like, well, that's not the real me. And I want them to be authentic, but at the same time, who defines what Black is? Is Black really a certain way of talking? Is Black a certain way of dressing? Because the reality is, and y'all know where I can go with that, what is our nationality? We really, as a people, as African Americans who came through the Middle Passage, we can't really align. We can if we trace it, but we can't really even align with a certain, you know, we're going to have this or have that. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming with that. So please help me, help us. Whoever wants to, you know, all right, Travis, come on, Travis.
Thank you. I feel like I've been doing all the baseball signaling, you know. This is such a powerful question. A few months ago, I actually spent time researching exactly this, like what is exactly the Black community? And I took the time and interviewed well over 100 different men and women of the Black community from different income levels, educational levels, different values. And I found the most interesting thing, because I thought I was going to find this, like, just this great aha to where now we have these concrete steps on how to move. But what I found is that there is no single definition of what the Black community is, who's actually in the Black community, and how the Black community operates. There are several authors, and one of the more prominent ones, he actually wrote that there are 4 different Black communities, and he gave an explanation on as to how they look and sound, and then how they interact with one another. But it was just very eye-opening to me, because when we think about unity and coming together to achieve this goal, it's, as of now, it's fair to say, based on my research only, just and I know I haven't spoken to everyone, but I did try to get a good data set, is that, like, no one really knows what the Black community is, or we have different ideas of what the Black community is. And it's fair to say there are many subsets within that actual overall umbrella, and we're all working at this unity and equality, and from our different places. And so with that being said, it's hard sometimes to just identify who we are or what makes us Black, simply because based on educational levels, based on class levels, and then based on your own interactions with a mainstream society, your definition shifts.
And so I guess that's where we have to, in knowing who we authentically are, I guess let's say, what is that question? Because that's great. I love the way you put that. How can I be my authentic self when who I am differs from the spaces I'm trying to go into? I'm going to throw this back because I really believe that Tori as well can speak to this. Give us some ways, some practical ways that we can be authentic, and even when getting that pushback, tell us how we can navigate that. I'm going to throw that to Mr. Brown.
The first thing you have to do is soul search within yourself. You have to know
That's
who
good.
you are as a person. And when you look, as simple as just waking up in the morning, and then when you step in front of that door, when you're interacting with people, you are identifying yourself as, for me personally, it would be Tori Brown. But Tori Brown's identifying himself also as a Black man, African American, whatever I define myself in as, and I operate in that space, and no one can take that away from me. Now, when we're having these conversations, I can relate to the variations within the Black community based off of my own personal experience. Then I can so-called give it a definition in that space. But overall, it has to start with you identifying as who you are. And as we kind of see other parts of humanity defining who they are within their own community, that's how you understand how all that works.
Awesome. Christian, come on board.
Okay, so I think it all really depends on the space that you're in. Number one, we all have that. There's so many different, every Black person has a different experience. So that's one reason why it's extremely hard to define Blackness. Now, when I started my career at Livingstone College at HBCU in higher ed, at Livingstone, at an HBCU, I could go to work in my dashiki and it was accepted. It was a mixed, when we look at it from the faculty and staff aspect, it was a mixed, a diverse group of individuals. But because it was HBCU life, I had to be respected. You go say something about my dashiki at HBCU, So then when I transitioned into nonprofit, it became very different, where I shared with you already some of the things that I have to do. I'm with a very diverse population of people. So when I'm training my students, because this, going back to the initial question that you asked, when we talk about career readiness, there are these 7 foundational things that I believe that every strong professional is going to have. One of those strong foundations is that called career management. And so oftentimes when I have to teach this to our trainees who are going into the IT profession, right? They're going into building their careers in IT, which means that they could be in any space, right? I tell them that it is your responsibility to manage how you're going to present yourself. Now, that's hard for me because I choose a lot of different paths. I choose to be kind of fluid. I go in and out of code switching, and then sometimes I choose to just be full blackness with whatever we define that as. Right? I choose to do that, and I have to, because as a trainer and teacher, I want them to see in this professional space there are moments where you allow these things to shine. But the reason why I will allow this to shine is because I got my foot through the door and I put on professionalism. I put whatever we call professionalism within that industry, which may be a black suit, you know, whatever, that blue suit, whatever it is, I put on professionalism because when I first get through the door, I don't want to be a distraction from I don't want you to be distracted from my skills. As an industry professional, wherever you're in, it's my firm belief that people, when you first start a position, when you first go into the industry, people just need to see your professionalism. And we have a way in Western culture, which we can argue, of what we expect for professionalism. Now, I tell my students, once you get in there and you have that review and they tell you that you're excellent, I tell them to grow your hair out. Ladies, do it all. Just do whatever you want to do. But establish yourself and show your value in the company, and then say, okay, you all are going to receive me with who I am. And if you can't receive who I am once I've shown you my professionalism, my skill set, that's your issue, and I need to move on, or I need to sue you as well. You know, and then it becomes you have to make that decision. So that's my real strong belief on that. That's me.
If you don't mind, sorry, I sense the tension in what Christian and Tori are saying, and I'm hoping that by asking this question, I can have each of you speak more about this. Even looking at the chat from August Twist, when we speak about authenticity and how sometimes that closes doors. I have four years left until retirement, so like I operate in all, like, to Christian's point, in any way that I decide, I move the way I love because I've already proven myself, right? And then because I teach in an all male school for males of color who are all adults, so like we're on the cusp of adulthood, and we try to tell them, like, what do you need to be successful? And because of empowerment, we kind of move from Tori's perspective, like, hey, this is who I am. Embrace all that I am. I do not need to assimilate for you to find skill or to find value in me. However, as Travis, I also know that, to Christian's point, there were times that I really needed to put some of myself aside to make sure my skills were highlighted without losing my identity. So, so anyone on this call or on this conference, like, what will be your advice for actually successfully navigating that tension? Because we can say that easily now because we're much older and we've have our foundations. But for the people just starting out, for the 18-year-olds who are just starting college or just starting their careers, how do you have them navigate this tension of being my authentic Black self, but then also making sure that people understand who I am and are able to value me because of my skills or even see my skills?
And I just want to jump in here because we have this streaming from multiple places, and we got a question in that I'm not seeing here on this feed. This lady, and it's going to back up right here, but I want to get this in so that when you guys answer, you can answer her as well. I have my 10-year-old and 12-year-old grandsons sitting with me. They need advice from strong Black men. Advise us, brothers. So to that point, as you guys are answering Brother Travis's questions, I want you to speak not only to him, but to that 10-year-old, that 12-year-old, and the others that are watching this live feed. Oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps.
That was code switching, y'all. Goosebumps.
Well, oh my God, oh my God, I felt goosebumps. Yeah, that's it. Hey, so I have to say this because this is what I didn't add to the end of what I just said. This is the price that we pay historically as a Black people because we did not keep our own businesses and communities and wanted so bad to be accepted by the white man. Oh, yesterday I watched Pocahontas, and I like Disney. They called the white man oh man, I can't, pink visitors or something. It was hilarious. It made me laugh. But this is the price that we pay. And so that's good. There again, with that management, you have to decide as a professional, as a person in the world, what means most to you. You know, if it's about you getting the money and not necessarily being true to yourself, then I think that you play a certain amount of what we call play the game. If it's about your authenticity as a person, I think you have to be an entrepreneur and build from the ground up. You have to start your own business so that you don't have to play anybody else's games. That's my thoughts.
All right, Mr. Brown, jump in there.
Based off of what Christian said, then what has to then come in there is that individual who fits in the middle of that. So they have to find balance. So I look at it like this: respect is a two-way street from all ages. Right. Once you're born in this life, you are deserved respect. So you come in this world and in your spaces with an identity of respect. You work within that. It should reciprocate amongst those who are around you. And if it doesn't, you have to either make that choice. You either have to code switch, or like Christian said, you're going to have to go out and do it for yourself. But in the event that you're able to have that strength to work within it, once you define that you cannot be disrespected in no shape or form, then it's everything will write itself forward from that point forward.
Oh, that's good. I want to get Mr. Clayton in here, the voice of wisdom. And then I want to ask you guys a question that I'm hearing in each of your comments. Yes, Mr. Clayton. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to get you on here. All right.
Am I there?
Yes.
I've listened to these young men talk about the different ways that they don't want to lose their own identities. Again, I'm from a different generation, but I want you to know this. You got 10-year-olds listening to this, so I want them to know, number one, we have worth. I remember when I started this, okay, I was always an uphill battle for me because I was Black and they were white. But I want you to know this. Once they knew what I could do, color didn't become the issue. Profit became the issue. And I made myself worth more than what I necessarily was. Okay? So when you wake up in the morning, yes, I'm Black. And I get the because of my age, I get the pleasure and opportunity to be who I am wherever I go. And I've earned that right only because I made myself worth known when I was much younger. So what I'm going to say to you is, you need to do the same. Sometimes you have to become colorblind, believe it or not. And know that as a man, Black man first, but still as a man, okay, we have to prove ourselves in this world in different areas. And not because it's necessarily because they're Black and we're Black. Because I will tell you, there is as much fight within our race as out of it sometimes. But I will tell you this. That's right. You work. And once people recognize that, I don't care what color they are. If they're smart, they will make use of that.
That's powerful.
And the fact that you're black is only a premium at that point. I worked in industries where I was the only black guy sometimes in the room. But it didn't make a difference because I was probably also the smartest black guy in that room. So I would tell you that, Tori, education is the start. 10-year-olds, education is the start. Then you need to go out in the world and prove who you are by being honest, by being what you say you are. You don't have to be two different people. Okay? Who you are in that work wheel or out in the world is the same person you can be at home. Now I've had to learn that, and hopefully you will all learn that. But you have worth, and that's the biggest thing I want to say. You have worth, and just pass that on to every young man you get a chance to, that they have worth. And once they educate themselves and learn about what it is they want to do and what they want to be in this world, they will be a great value and add to wherever they are. Done.
So, if I could pop in for just a couple of seconds, Mr. Clayton, thank you. I certainly honor your words and I honor your wisdom, and I'm glad your perspective is here. Is there echo?
Yeah, there is. Okay.
So there's a slight
you're
echo.
good.
We're good.
Excellent. All right. So as Mr. Clayton spoke, I can't help but to hear this tension of the Booker T. Washington philosophy of actually, coming up and I think many of us on this call we've all nodded our heads at certain times, signifying that we understand the value of hard work and proving who we are. But being an educator and a father of teens, many of these of the youth now, and the 10-year-old and 12-year-old on this call are probably more of a Du Boisian in terms of moving, because it's like, hey, equality now, value me now.
Yes.
I wonder, because I'm definitely of the Washington philosophy, but I challenge myself each day to step back and to be open to what Du Bois said as well. Because where we are now, call it the MTV Jackson generation, call it the instant gratification age. Thank you so much. But a lot of the people that I mentor, from as a teacher, as a life coach, as a personal development coach, they're not trying to hear these long steps of putting work in or putting value in or making myself look valuable. When they say, hey, to Mr. Clayton's point, I have worth now. Why do I need to wait? So speaking to that 10 and 12-year-old, please help me out with, how do we instill this value for a Du Boisian, build yourself up, cast down your bucket where you are? Like, how do we build them to that? Or do we really need to say, how can we assist you with where you are right now with your current mindset?
Because I don't think that we do the talent. I don't think we do the talented 10th well. That's what we chose, and I don't think we do that well. We have crabs in the bucket mentality.
Amen.
So we don't do the talented.
Say that again, Mr. Reeves. What did you say?
I said we don't do the talented 10th theory well, because we have a crab in the bucket. We're always pulling on each other. We don't really want to see each other do well. And so, and I think the way, when we tie in social media, and Generation Z is very focused on social media, even more than millennials, right? It's all about stunting for the gram and what I have. And if I want to stunt on the gram, I don't necessarily really want to see you obtain what I have either. So I think that we've built this, me, myself, and I. It's not really about other people. It's about me shining, everybody else seeing who I am. So I think that there's some fundamental, foundational kind of stuff that we have to really, I think, sometimes I think we're not building those things at home. I deal with most of my students are 18 to 25 years old. There's some stuff I say is missing from the house. Your parents didn't teach you that. They didn't teach you some of these things, and it's necessary.
People like a boss. Wow. I'm trying to just let y'all roll with it. Who wants to go there? Because I'm hearing so much, but I don't want to cut this piece short.
Well,
Because as I'm talking,
the
go
landmine
ahead.
was kept on when they brought out the name of Du Bois, because that's he pretty much is my education mentor. Between him and John Dewey, my whole education philosophy is built off of those two. But 10 to 12, me personally, was when my eyes was really open. And that's when I learned the system in which I was operating in. And it was hard because for the most part at 10 to 12, I may have been the only black face in the in most of my classrooms. But I had that heart where I wanted my homeboy to be where I was. So, and it was, I always tried to, almost like the talented 10th, because I was in a level that was different from my homeboy. It was trying to bring him up. But the problem is like, you know, it depends on the environment. And like Travis talking about, that instant gratification. For that person, it may be hard work. Where for me, it may be just me just waking up and doing what I have to do. It becomes a challenge, and it causes some division. And that's why we probably often have that crab in the barrel mentality, because we look around and see for some it's easy, for the others it's harder. But that hand is still for the person who has it easy. If he just extend that hand, it has to be communicated to that person at all time. You always got me. If you continue to do what you got to do, I mean, you need to do, I'm here to help you. And that reassurance that no matter what happens in this life, you got somebody that looks like you. And then it's not even about I'm not even gonna say about color, but in the same operation that you, like, you got another peer who's 10, 12, going through what you're going through. And he's saying, listen, I'm bringing you with me. And then that other person has to make that choice.
Man, Tori, when you spoke, it triggered something. When you spoke to that 10 to 12-year-old, you know, such a pivotal time. And my girls are there. My son's just 3. But it took me back to being 10, 11, 12, and 5th grade. So, you know, I wasn't 12 in 5th grade, but in 5th grade at middle school, I'm in the media center. And so in elementary school, you know, they take us and they kind of direct us and they put all the books out for us. But when I get to 5th grade and I get to the big Sellersville Middle School, you know, the old one, right? Yeah. And I'm there in the media center, and it must have been Black History Month. And so they had about 7 books on Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, I don't know if my AME church did a poor job, and I didn't say that live, but I don't know, you know, if my family, but I remember in the 5th grade, getting a book. So I would say to the 10 to 12, read. But getting a book on Dr. King, and I fell in love with it because, you know, I hadn't heard of this. You know, he graduated high school 15. He went on to college. And so consequently, every book on Dr. King they had in the library, I read. And I think that really catapulted who I am, you know, a preacher, you know, educator, but I follow a lot of his philosophy. But then in the 6th grade, when I moved from Sudlersville to Kent County, I saw something different, because where I came from, I was a part of that talented 10th. When I went to the county over, and now instead of having 2 classes and having 4, and, you know, I can remember 6, 7, I was 8, 15, you know, those are like scars, because I went from being in the top, making straight A's, to just them enrolling me in the next to the bottom. And, you know, when I left there, I was just a C student. I just assimilated. And, you know, it wasn't until I went back to Queen Anne's in 9th grade, and I can remember sitting there with my mom, and she was like, "Nah, he's college prep." And they like, "Well, his grades don't say it." She said, "No, he just kind of fit in with everybody else. This is who he is." And so I would say to them, read, you know, find out who you are. You know, I'm a history man, just like you, Brother Tori and Brother Travis. You know, I'm a history teacher. Um, but, you know, I was inspired by not only Dr. King, but I was inspired by my 8th grade history teacher, Mr. Miller, who was a white man. So, you know, I just say to those young persons, you know, education will open many doors. And Christian just sparked something in me. You know, I want to be a part of that town the 10th before I get off the scene.
And there's a theme. Sorry, there's a theme that's coming up in the chat, and that was mentioned also. The theme of having to want it for themselves. I think Charles Bibbs mentioned that, and then it came here also. And I'm going to push back on that. I'm going to push back on this in front of everyone, only because as a person who serves those communities, where it's so much easier for me to mentor anyone that wants to meet me halfway. But that's not my caseload. And the people that I'm serving, the it that they supposedly need or are supposed to want, it may not be the same it that we value. For example, I started an entrepreneur class, and 100% of my class in the last 4 months were all African Americans, boys, men, young men. 100% of them successfully launched a business. Now, if we only looked at their grades and their educational level, what they were on track to doing, you would have thought only 2 students in the entire classroom had work. But since we changed what it was, and we didn't make it about education or it about complying or it about looking like or it about talking like, when you change it to what they wanted and who they are, then everyone wants it. And if we value all Black men or young men or boys or Black people as someone who wants something, and we're their facilitators to help them get there, that's when we will see real change. But as long as we keep challenging people or saying, hey, they need to want this thing that we haven't even clearly figured out what is, we will continuously leave people behind and write them off as unworthy. And then we will complain when we see them in the streets doing something else because we cannot figure out how to reach them because it did not match our it.
But Travis, you said something that from the 10-year-old to 100-year-old is so necessary for each of us, and that is mentorship. The mentorship piece is so important. And I don't think that we focus on that enough in our communities. We're trying to learn as we go. Everyone has to have a mentor. And the truth is you need mentorship in every area of your life, because that mentorship is going to provide accountability. That mentorship is going to give you a blueprint in which you can follow, and that mentorship is going to give you some glass ceilings to walk on, right? So I think that that's something very important, essentially figuring out what your purpose, your desire is, and let's change what the it is. There has to be an it in which I would like to say it has to be a passion. Everyone has to find that passion, and that's for the youngest to the oldest. Find the passion. Find the mentor who can assist you in building that passion and giving you a blueprint to follow. I think that is something that we really have to focus on so much more, because so many of our young Black boys and girls are fatherless. And so on our ends, as men who have accomplished, we talk about the talented 10th, and I'm going to bring the scripture in for a second. It says we have many teachers, but we have few fathers. Many of us are going to have to stand up and be fathers to sons and daughters that we did not raise. We have to open up our hearts and allow ourselves to do that. And we're going to have to provide that accountability and structure, because many homes don't have that.
So then what's next? I'm not going to speak long, sorry, only because I really want to dig into it for the people watching us. Because we're going back to now say, hey, they need mentors. There are several people out here in this world who are capable and who are able. But I'm telling you, through experience, it seems like just because their archetypes of what they want don't match our archetypes of what should be expected by Black men, we don't nurture that. So how do we get those mentors to the people who don't want to become college educated or may not want a college degree, but they have this idea they're passionate about? How do we get the mentors to support those people? Because if we don't support them and if they don't see people like us saying yes simply because it's not a bachelor's degree or because it's not a master's degree, If we're not doing it for them, where are they turning to?
One, bring Mr. Clayton on to talk about, and I keep taking him off. I'm sorry. The importance,
Okay, I'm
Washington.
unmuted.
The importance of mentorship and you know what it is that we can gather. I don't know if I've said this publicly, but having you on this panel is so profound because just being in your presence and being able to see what you have done in Queen Anne's County in the short time that you've been working. I mean, I just glean so much from you every time I'm in your presence. And so, you know, my wife and I would definitely consider you one of those great mentors. But tell us how important it is to have that mentor and what we should do.
Well, thank you, number one. I've been listening to Christian, I've been listening to Travis, and I always listen to Troy. But the one thing that I think is more important, he asked the question, how do we get those that don't want to be mentored to listen? And fortunately or unfortunately, you look at it any way you want, there's a different paradigm these days, okay? We that are gonna be mentors have to be willing to go places and do things that are out of the norm to be able to reach those that don't seem to want to be mentored. I'm fortunate to be able to work with young men who are the dregs of society, so to speak. Okay, but I know leaning down to give them a hand up is what's most important in my life right now, and hopefully it works in theirs. So I'm saying to you guys, okay, and to those 10-year-olds, okay, you have to lean down to give a hand, but you have to reach up to get a hand at the same time. So mentorship is probably the most important thing because there's life lessons that can be taught that aren't taught in school. I would tell you, I guess the greatest thing that bothers me is apathy. People that go along to get along and don't care about anybody else.
Right.
And we have a big disparity in our society over other societies. That's the word I'll use for that. Is that we don't help each other. So I got to tell you, any opportunity you get, give. Any opportunity they get, go get them, wherever they are. It doesn't matter if they want it or not. You got to find a way to let them see you and what life has done for you and what life has given you to have them want it. I had a mentor and a pastor that told me once, you love them until they ask you why. And that's always been profound to me. So at that point, you just keep trying. Is the answer to your question. I think it was Travis. How do you get the ones that don't want to be mentored? You keep trying. I'm done.
It was great stuff.
Wow. So much in that. And I know we're getting close to time and want to respect your time. And maybe we'll be able to come back in and talk a little bit about identity formation. And I say that because people who know me now, but they don't know that as the little girl growing up, Route 1, Box 108 in Graysonville, and the single wide brown and white trailer, the last house on the left before the dump road, that for me, I didn't even have any idea that one day I would hold multiple degrees, that one day I would be serving the Lord. And I think for me, it was a matter of not knowing my identity, not knowing my potential, because, you know, when I look back, I mean, I always loved school and things of that nature. And so when we come back, I do want us to speak to that crowd, like you said, you know, and unpack not just what's presented to us, because behavior is a story. but to unpack the story behind why that young girl, why that young boy seemingly is not receiving us. Who are the role models in their life? What has been their identity formation? And I wish we could go there, Travis. I saw it, but I got to get us to Minute to Win It. Seriously, you all, we have got to come back to this conversation. We have several questions we didn't even get to, and I understand that, but I really want you guys to speak to some of this. The first one that I want to talk about, Minute to Win It, means that you guys have 1 minute to share your first thoughts on this. Here is a phrase: school to prison pipeline. School to prison pipeline. Anybody want to take it? You got 1 minute.
I don't want to keep talking. I want to share the air. The educator in me is like 3, then me, and I know I'll keep talking after 1. But if no one will jump on this,
jump in.
I'm going to jump.
This is you.
Excellent. So I have several thoughts on this, but I am going to condense it to about 45 seconds. We have the opportunity to actually change this. There are several schools, especially charter schools. There are schools that are opening all the time, especially in urban areas, who are really focusing on changing that outcome. Nationally, though, so I can only speak for schools where the majority of people look like me or all the same in terms of having Black skin. We have the opportunity to change those things. However, in schools where there are diverse crowds, or we are in the minority, and I've attended schools like that all of my life, it is going to be different in terms of we really need to make sure that we have the mentors or a team of resource-ready people to advocate for those people who are the minorities in their school. Because oftentimes, if they're suspended or that they are given some kind of consequence that involves them being separated from the school, there's no one there for them to stand up for them to say they need more. And then we have these civil rights data release, national policies are changed to prevent this foundational thing from happening. And it continues to happen over and over again, simply because those people are not in those spaces, protecting those in those moments.
Wow. Wow. That's rich. Anybody else? School to prison pipeline. And you did it in your time.
It's a real thing. As a para, it becomes almost like my daily duty to keep certain students from disciplinary actions, because I mean that's what usually puts them on the road towards that, and it becomes a burden on yourself, because what you end up doing is finding yourself in a position of always running to the issue and to the student and constantly trying to prevent them from seeing the principal or receiving that disciplinary action. And just like we were talking about with the whole mentorship, it's very heavy, because it's not race based, because in my space, I'm majority white at my school, and I have students who are put in that position all the time. And before they see administration, I'm the one who they run to, and I have to almost put them in, like, listen, you got to tighten things up, because what you're not seeing, you're looking at the right now. I'm looking at tomorrow, because one day they're going to get sick and tired of you. They're going to put you out of here. Your parents are going to get frustrated, and then you're going to feel like you're out here by yourself. You're going to remember Mr. Brown, but at the same time, you're going to be in a position where I may not be able to do anything for you. And then you're put in that system, and unless you have that either change of heart or that privilege, the road forward is downhill.
Now, I work in a youth detention facility and have for the last 16 years. And what you were saying, Tori, is absolutely correct, because when we were in school, we had the alternative classroom, and years later they have the alternative schools, And when they put the kids in alternative school, then next thing you know, they're in placement or they're in detention. And so I had a lot of parents and people in the community like, know where I work and what I do. Can I bring my son up there? Can he spend the weekend there? He needs to know what it's like. And my advice is don't get your kids in the system because, although we do a great job, we're not going to love your kid like you're going to love your kid. And it starts with, like you said, cutting up in school. Then they put them in the alternative school because they bring, they're the ones that's bringing the numbers down. And next thing you know, they've done something real. It could be real minor with juvenile services. And then once they're in, they're 3 or 4 years later for something minor because when they get in the system, they just start assimilating. That's not all kids. There are some that are success stories, but just like you said, if you ain't gonna do right in school, there's a big chance that you might end up in the prison pipeline.
Okay. All right. I got to move this conversation. I have three more topics, and we're going to begin to pull this to a close. My second topic is, and this one is probably a little bit more. Mr. Clayton, did I miss you? Was there something you wanted to add? Was there something you wanted to add?
Only thing I wanted to add was the fact that as kids come out of school, they need to have options. And the problem with going into the prison pipeline is that they feel they have no options other than do what they do. So those who aren't going on to college, those who aren't going on to trade school, it's where that pool of mentors needs to come into play. They need to have somebody to walk them into life. Okay? I've been on the streets. Okay, I ain't always been saved. So I know what goes on out there. And at that point, I've mentored young men on the street doing some of the same things they've been doing. So I got to tell you, they want somebody to look up to. So, I mean, the only way to keep them out is to give them an alternative. Amen.
Amen. Go ahead, Travis. I saw it. Go ahead. Go ahead. Are you good?
No, I was great.
This is awesome. I want to throw this one out there. Actually, I'm gonna shift it up. I have a list here. We got to continue this conversation. So let's go just a little slightly to politics in a sense. This one I want to touch on because I think it's real important, and I have my thoughts on it. But what are you guys' thoughts on the 15th Amendment? I'll start with Mr. Clayton.
Okay, you unmuted me. Okay, we're in an election year right now. I'm always saddened when I see the numbers of people that actually vote. And I was looking at this just last night. Okay, that amendment was given to men. We all know in the beginning. Okay, women had to wait even longer for it. And the fact that we don't example that right to those around us is ludicrous. So we're to blame for some of the problems that we have ourselves. But I would tell you, and I'm guilty because some of my life I didn't vote either. But it's become an important issue for me now. So I pass that along to my children. In fact, when those ballots came in the mail this time, it was really important to me that all my household get their ballots back. And they'll tell you I hopped on them until they did. It's too important, even when you know it might be, in some cases, still get your voice, have your voice heard. The only words I can use for that. Have your voice heard.
Absolutely. And I chose that because in recent years, you've been hearing politicians even, I guess they see this as them being a champion for African Americans. But when we begin to think strategies and tactics, I want personally the 15th Amendment to be on the hearts and minds of every person who is Black in America, because why are we continuing to extend voting rights for African Americans? Why are we the only group of people where every so often politicians vote to extend our right to vote another 25 years? Why aren't we just talking about just abolishing the whole thought process of us being 3/4 of a man? And when you have to, in my mind, continue to extend and give me the right to something that I just inherently have a right to, that speaks to us needing to shift the mindset. So when somebody thinks, well, I voted to extend it, no, about how about voting to get it off the books and just give us our right completely? So I don't want us to lose that. Anybody else on 15th Amendment?
I can take that right now.
Yes.
It goes back to, I'm gonna take it back 50 years. It's political education. Malcolm said it in Ballot and the Bullet. One, because we are been trained to believe that this is a two-party system, we're only voting for one of the two parties,
Join me now.
and we end up
Yes.
voting a down ticket and not understanding that it's bigger than a down ticket. Your national and federal vote is a smaller portion compared to your local. Let's take Queen Anne's County in perspective. What we do understand, we are only 6% of the population, which is a small percentage of the voters. Because you look within that 6%, you find out how many people are homeowners. You if you don't pay taxes, your voice technically does not count. You count in a sense, but you're not. So when policies and things that affect us most in our everyday, it comes locally. When you don't have that power, they can do whatever they want. Above that, they understand that no one is going into the White House or any major political legislative without the Black vote. So that's why they come to us on Sunday mornings and try to appeal to us, because they're only appealing to that branch. But understanding that what we're seeing with these protests and stuff, these are local elections that we need to participate. So we need to understand where we are in location and how that affects the importance of our vote versus looking at us globally, because we're 40 million people, 13% of the nation, 40 million people spread across 50 states and 2 provinces with different views. So what they know they can galvanize off of that, they can do whatever they want. So it begins with political education, understanding where you are on the local aspect first before you can do anything else.
Wow. That's powerful. Second time we've heard that today, because it's going to be those who are in local jurisdictions whose decisions are going to have the greatest impact on our everyday life. And so I think that's real important that we have that conversation. And as you guys have been alluding to, not just every 4 years when somebody wants our vote, but I think that there's some stipulations, there's some demands that we as a people should be putting before politicians, and not just your party affiliation automatically gets my vote, because it's gotten us nowhere. And the quicker that we wake up to that, and we begin to put the power on and put the pressure on, I think that will begin to invoke some change. Let's go here, and then we're gonna come to a wrap up. I do apologize, but I want to respect your time. This is a phrase that my brother enlightened me on, and I like this. I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. Black America versus Blacks in America. Mr. Brown, you gonna jump on that one?
No, because technically Christian jumped on this earlier, so I was trying to wait for him to be on this because we technically jumped on this, even Travis with the whole defining what is black. So yeah, I'll bow out of this.
Okay. All right. Last one before we talk strategies. Two very important statements were made that made an impression on me. One was by Bishop T.D. Jakes when he addressed what's happening in our country. And in essence, he says, a noose or a knee, both designed to strangle me at the neck and choke the life out of me. Malcolm X has been quoted as saying, that's not a chip on my shoulder, it's a knee on my neck. Minute to win it. Who wants to take it?
Well, let's talk about Malcolm X. All right. As you see, I'm all for Malcolm X. But let me tell you something. I'm upset with our people quoting Malcolm X. We have to look, if we're going to talk about Malcolm X, we have to look at the totality of Malcolm X. Now, you can't say that you're with Malcolm X and you don't talk about Malcolm X post-Hajj, okay? Because Malcolm X still would have tore everything up, but Malcolm X was very different after his Hajj. And yes. I think that, when we talk about where we are today, I think we are helping the system by having no real Black leadership. We have no real leadership. And so we're reactive to all that's going on, but there's no plan to what's going to happen after the moment has silenced, after things have calmed down. So I think that we're going to continue to see the same things over and over and over until we obtain real leadership within our community. We are Black in America, and there is no Black America because there's no leadership that we have for ourselves. And I think we're going to continue to see the same thing. I think that we help ourselves. I'm not taking anything off because I'm upset, and this is the first time I've said anything about any of this socially. I've been very quiet. I think that we help. You know, I saw a video last night of protesters down there doing the electric slide in DC. Now, you know, y'all got me on the church site, so I'm gonna use my clean because I feel like saying real bad words right now. But you're talking about a knee on the neck. You're having a party. We need leadership. We're hurting ourselves. When white people see you out there turning this into a party, everything that you've done the last 2 weeks becomes null and void.
As you're answering that, guys, please pull in, because that's one of the terms I was gonna throw in was leadership vacuum. So let's pull that together as you answer. Go ahead, Travis, please.
Thank you so much. And I see several people in the comments as well, so I'm going to touch on that. I do feel the pressing need to debunk the myths of what we see about ourselves or hear about ourselves on the media channels and news. Because I was also downtown in Washington, D.C., where I live and where I teach, and there were thousands of people coming together in a way that I have never seen in my 38 years of existence. For the first time, it felt like an actual movement, tens of thousands of people. So, doubt not, there were pockets of people during the election. There were times where I laughed or my friends told a joke, and we had to keep this unity and there's something together with us, even laughing sometimes, to make sure that we could sustain our fight and our marching, because there were people marching all day yesterday. So I doubt not that the electric slide did not occur. It probably did, but we are allowed to experience joy, especially when we are protesting for these. I didn't see it. What I saw were over 10,000 people literally marching in unison, chanting in unison. But to your point, what was shown was people doing the electric slide. And I think August just commented as well. He was down there yesterday. And like, we didn't see any of that. Tears were flowing. People were coming together. People were being giving away free things. Typically, it's people selling water or selling snacks or selling things on the corner. As we go through these movements, everything was free. Do you need medical attention? Do you need care? Do you need shelter? Do you need water? It was a community for once. And I'm sorry that the takeaway for some media people was that people are down there doing the electric slide. Real quick, sorry, Tasha, I did see your question about the who's there to help these people. There are always people to help those who come out of prison, who want to vote and so on. Now, are they doing that with fidelity? That's where the local politics gets involved. We discussed the 15th Amendment, but a lot of the local politics, the local governments, comes for us actually supporting or engaging in our local processes, what people may call grassroots. But if we only talk about elections or voting as a civic action, then we continuously only vote for a president while leaving our communities completely exposed. Marilyn, I don't have time about thoughts on Malcolm X, so I'm trying to make sure we share everyone. But I will call you after this over to talk about Malcolm more, because I always teach Malcolm every single year, juxtaposed to Martin Luther King. And our ultimate takeaway is that their ideals were not that different. Martin shifted his views as he went along. Malcolm certainly shifted his views as they went along. And in the end, had they both not met an untimely demise, I would have been curious to see what it became, because they were merging together rapidly into one.
Yeah.
So,
anybody else before we go ahead?
So since I was kind of drug on this panel to different brothers, one of these minute to win it's that she had there, and I want to speak to Christian, Tori, jump in, or whoever wants to jump in. One of these minute to win it she had was the church, and like you, brother Christian, I tried to remain silent. I agree. We need strong leadership, and a lot of times people are looking for it from the pulpit. So you have to choose your words. Just choose your words. And some of my brothers, saying stuff now, I'm like, whoa. They're a little more mature than me. Kind of like Mr. Washington. I'm at the age now. I say what I want. But my thoughts on it were. I've been black for 47 years. I'll be black for 47 plus more years, Lord willing. And so there are some things that aren't going to change per se. I mean, we want racial justice, and we want, politics. And I brought up Barack Obama earlier, because when I was 17, there were no blacks in the Senate. So that was my goal, I loved history, and I wanted to be in the Senate. And once I realized, you had to raise millions of dollars to make 120,000 or whatever it was at the time, that kind of debunked what I thought about being a senator. But when I saw Senator Barack become the president, he kind of fulfilled my dream in doing it. But on this minute to win it, she said, where is the voice of the church? And I think in this hour, and my perspective is, because we always speak, we always have a platform. I'm like, let somebody else speak. I speak every week. You want to hear what I got to say? Come to church, for lack of better terms. Yeah, come to church. You want to hear what I got to say? But I don't want us to be pushed out on the limb and then turn around and there's nobody following, or that's just kind of my perspective. Like, okay, it's hot now, but 2 weeks from now, is it still going to be hot? Is it still going to be relevant? But I believe that this is the church's final hour, although we've been put out to churches, my brother told me. But what are your thoughts on Black man in the church in 2020?
So let me say this, and then I won't say anything else the rest of this time. But I have an issue with Black church in general. Now, I have been here in Baltimore almost a year. I grew up in the South. In the South, there are no influential churches left in Black neighborhoods. You don't see it. Black pastors build their churches in the hood. They have all these resources that they are given to the people while they're there. They're taking the tithe, they're taking the offering money, right? And they're building this ministry. Then once they know they need a bigger building, they don't build the building in the hood. They take the building and the resources to the suburbs, and most of the members can't even get there anymore. So,
Wow.
I have an issue with church because when you look at the statistics, when you look at the data, on Monday morning, we take millions of dollars to the bank. But few churches doing a wonderful job building people spiritually, but what are we doing to build our people and our communities? And you can't say as a whole, Black Christians have money. We can come together and do some things and make some differences. So I think until we stay committed to our neighborhoods, I get upset when I go to a church anniversary and they say 300 years. I know that you weren't out here in the suburbs 300 years ago. You weren't here.
Right.
You've built this and moved and taken the resources, because our churches offer so much resources to people. And so I think it's imperative in this time for us to make a real decision to stay faithful to our people, because Black women put so much money into the church. If no one else protects the Black woman, the Black church should, because they fund the church. It's problematic, and it's why we don't have the influence that we should have. We have not stayed committed to our neighborhoods. That's all I have to say on that.
Wow.
I hear you.
Anybody else before I jump in? Yes, Mr. Clayton, let's get you right in here.
Just a couple of quick things, and I'll try to tie together real quick. As far as protests that are going on right now in this country and how it will lead to change, that's going to be up to the people doing the protests, number one. But we don't have a representation in politics, okay, for them to make a difference for us. So we're going to have to be the ones, this next generation, I keep saying this, that moves those positions in some way. Unfortunately, in the rules, okay, there aren't enough of us to make change, unfortunately. And the ones that are talking about it, they're kind of like the guy shouting to the choir. As far as the church is concerned, that's where most of the leaders we have in the Black community are. But I would ask that they would do it better. They would become socially aware of what's going on in the community and offer those resources, like Christian says, back to the community that they're trying to serve, or they claim they serve. So I don't know what's going to come of this. I don't want to see it die because I'm so young folks. I'll protest line, because at that point it's getting something started in them. And I don't want to see them start it and drop it.
Right.
So I'm hoping that in some way we can, as the older generation, we'll encourage you, okay? But as the younger generation, you got to step up. I'm done.
Good.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Anybody else before I jump in here?
I'm coming in. But yeah, I'm very sensitive about this. But it comes to this. I'm going back to my ancestors here. It was a song they used to sing, and I do it often with that mindset. And it's, must Jesus bear the cross alone, and all the world go free? No, bear the cross for everyone, and bear the cross for me. Did Jesus not tell his disciples to take up their cross and follow me? Was his first sermon at the age of 12 not related to social issues? It's not the Sermon of the Mount about social issues. So if we're going to represent a body that is supposed to represent a spirit of a man who is God's word, why are we not doing the work that he was sent here to complete? Are we just going to be comfortable living under the grace and wait until our judgment day come for our reward? Or are we going to put our feet to the fire and do what, as they say, thus saith the Lord?
Travis, I'm gonna join you on that one. Brother, I'm gonna join you on that one.
And you know, this is so powerful. I was trying to bring this to a close. I mean, we've got to continue this conversation because I think it's very important for us to understand that without there being action to what we say, we will remain irrelevant. And it's unfortunate that we build these silos. I saw somewhere in the chat when someone talked about the church being inclusive, and I understand some of the pushback. Some of the pushback is people have felt that, you know, we need to take our identity from this way. We can't allow this. I don't want to get into that. But when we really begin to move away from being in these silos and coming together, because the reality is in some churches, I can't speak to all, but in some churches, there we really don't even take inventory of the demographics of the people that we serve. And I say that because if we don't learn to be relevant to more than just the people that we're comfortable with, we're going to always be at a disadvantage.
That's good.
And I'm really walking lightly here because that's where pastors have to be like Jesus. We can't even allow those who are here with us to cap us, because it very well may be people outside of our warm market that we need to partner with, who has a little bit of more education, has a little bit more understanding. But if we want to allow the people to cap us, that we always have to have and approach the gospel and approach the way we do church a certain way, then we're going to remain here. Because the reality is, just like in Blackness, there are Black people who can't relate to the way you do church. And so we got to learn to expand ourselves and recognize that God didn't create clones. And when we learn to appreciate the giftings of other people and learn how to, instead of being afraid and intimidated or at odds with it, to begin to pull our uniquenesses together, and then I think we'll be a force. And I say that because, you know, when we think leadership vacuum, when we think of, and I say this to offer hope, we are on the other side of civil rights, but the communities were experiencing the exact same thing that we're experiencing now before a Dr. Martin Luther King came on the scene. And so I think we're moving in a good direction because we're all thinking, what's next? See, we're on the side, you know, because we know what he did. But before he became president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, before he connected it, I mean, we have to recognize that civil rights is not as we see it, because we just look at it from the history books and we just see that small window. Oh, it was from here, and then in 60 this happened, and in 60 that happened. No, actually, the fight for civil rights really began to take place when sharecroppers began to pop up after the Reconstruction, when Blacks were doing well, and then laws began to go on the book to limit us, because it was that 7 maybe to 10 years after the Civil War where we had more Blacks that were represented in the government, where Blacks were acquiring land, and we were in a new position. And then what happened was, and this is what I'm hoping that we as Black people will understand, to move away from the emotionalism of what's happening, do our research, recognize what's being fed to us, but instead of us jumping on somebody else's agenda, that we as a people begin to rally around our own agenda and place our demands. Here's an example. Why were the Black Panthers, why were they so successful? Why did they even rise to power? Is because not only did they come to protest, but they began to get together and begin to release through their own. We don't have to have somebody else tell our story through media, but they began to write their own publications. They had that 10-point plan, and they said, you know, and I may not come in agreement with everything on that, and we'll all never agree on 100%. But if we can get some things that we can rally around, that's when they begin to say police to police. Gregory Newman told us that 30 years ago at the Graceville Community Center. What did they do? They recognized, guess what? If the Second Amendment is there, it's there for all of us. So they began to have networks of people that in their communities, whenever somebody Black was stopped by the police, now, like I said, we might have a different strategy today, but they stood and you would see pictures of them. They would line the street with their own guns. And they were policing the police. We can do that now, even with our cell phones. And I'm just pulling that out as just one example, because it's going to be very important for us. The work is there. We have to keep it before one another. And again, I believe that the church absolutely should be at the forefront of this, without regard to who's going to lead it, but coming together. Because Dr. King, when you look at his life, even with Malcolm X, right, even within, there's that in-group conflict. But nevertheless, we got to get behind somebody, begin to look at, maybe come up with a 10-point or a 20-point agenda to present and say, this is what we want. We want, this is the type of change. This is the policy change. And I want to say that and then ask you guys to give us some closing remarks, because that's where we need to begin to focus as intercessors, our prayer. Okay, God, what is the next step? Begin to have those conversations. What is it that we want? And maybe we'll have a conversation on strategies, because I've been just pulling and looking at different places to try to get some idea, where are we going to go? God, who are you speaking to? And us coming together, because when we come together, if we don't have a vision, without a vision, the people are going to perish. So I got a lot more I could say on that, but this is the men's night. But so we want to go with that. I have scrapped almost all of this. So I'm going to leave you guys with this and ask in your final moments, if there's anything else that you want to give, what advice that you would give to a young Black male living in American society, or in your own thoughts, what are agenda points that we can put before every local, state, and national politician that we can gather around? So I have to bring it to a close, guys. I thank you all so much. This has been great. It's so much more we want to unpack, and we got to do this again. But let's think about that. Any closing thoughts, any closing advice, or any closing ideas on what we can do, where we should be going, what our next steps should be?
So I'll jump on and go first. First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you to everyone on this call. Thank you to everyone in the comments. The comments have been extremely helpful in terms of helping me formulate my thoughts, and just like thank you overall. My final words is this, and I tell people all the time that I mentor and coach, it's a grassroots movement. We may never come together with this one agenda, and we may never come together with this one idea that we all jump on. But every movement that has been successful has started local, all right? And even speaking to other people, we can start with the grassroots, which transforming the people who sit at the table where we eat, and extending that to the schools we serve, extending that to the communities those schools are in. That's how the movement gets started, whether it's political, social, financial, it starts at those places. So I will always default to grassroots and community activism before everything else.
Good stuff. Mr. Clayton, we want to bring you in. You're on.
Me too. Thanks for having me. Glad.
Oh, wait a minute. Mr. Clayton? Mr. Clayton, I'm sorry. There you go. You're Mr. Clayton, I'm sorry. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, I guess
You're good.
Anyhow, to wrap up, number one, men, for your comments and your concern. If I could give advice to any of you young men right now, it's that get involved and stay involved. All too often, I've seen, especially in the nonprofit work that I do, especially in the African American community, too much of a sense, again, of apathy. Those not willing to get involved. Don't be that person. is the best advice I can give you. Because no matter what you do, it's more than somebody was doing before you. I know that I'm not going to be around a lot longer, but I hate to see the work that I've done, okay, not be carried on, because it is important that people know who we are, who we were, and what we represent. So I'm depending on you guys as young men, as young Black men, okay, to tell our story and to keep telling it. The other thing is, I've seen too often young men feel that they're owed something in this world, so they have a chip on their shoulder. Get it off. The world doesn't owe you a thing, but the world should and know that you're capable and you deserve everything that's coming to you. So go get it. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for sharing.
I'll jump in. I was trying to make a note for myself, but I actually shared it, so I'll jump in right there. First of all, I want to thank you, Lady Kia and Pastor Reed. Thank you so much for allowing us to share in this platform, and to these incredible brothers. Thank you all so much for being such strong thought leaders. So I think mental health is very important for Black men. I think that we suffer in silence, and we have had two very traumatic things to take place at one time. We're dealing with social justice, police brutality, and quarantine. And when we get out of this, brothers, please, please, please find someone to talk to, because all of this is very traumatic, and it's a lot on your brain, a lot going on. And when you get back into, I was walking through the grocery store listening to the funeral the other day and listening to Al Sharpton. I was ready to tear the grocery store up, So, we need somebody to talk to. There's a lot going on. So I think that mental health aspect is very, very important. So let's shun those bad thoughts and that we have on therapy and talking to someone. Please find you someone to talk with. Number two, I think that we have to realize that we are the foundation of economy for the United States of America. Invest in Black businesses. And T.I. has a day where he wants us to go Black, where we completely spend no money outside of our own businesses. And I think that that's something that we should do. Let's take that day and let's let the world see how much we invest of our money into everybody else's stuff. I think money speaks louder than anything else. If we want to hurt people, I said, let's hurt them with their pocket. They'll listen when they don't see that money. Let's start investing in our own businesses. Let's get that mental health. Thank you all so much for allowing me to share.
Amen. Thank you so much. Mr. Brown.
To sum it all up with balance, it had mental health and everything else has to come in together with balance. This is a hard task to endure, and going in it at a young age, you're going to be conflicted with so many things. You're going to find your homeboys, or they're not going to be in agreement, or then you're going to find out that they are. But as the road gets longer, they're going to fall back. But you have to stay the course. I am not here right now if I didn't stay the course. It is still difficult to me. I should be where Travis is right now, but because of this road, I am where I am. But I know I'm here for a purpose, and my audience has changed. But you still stay the course. Stay the course.
Wow. Stay the course. Gentlemen, this has been phenomenal. This has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm just going to have Pastor Reed to just close us out. And we want to say, even to our viewing audience, thank you. We thank you for your input. We thank you for fueling the conversation with your comments. We appreciate you. And we just thank you. We just thank you, thank you, thank you. I like this as a last question. It says, I wonder if this is something each of us can invest in each of our respective communities. I think that's a strategy. I think that's a plan. We need to get together and work out logistics, and we need to definitely have more conversations. But again, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Pastor Reed. And we're going to try to close this out.
Amen. Well, thank you, brothers. A really great conversation, real thought provoking. All of you are educators in your own right. So I appreciate the collaboration between the great thinkers and the talented tenth, or whatnot, that we've been able to gather tonight. Thank you to my lovely wife, uh, who's super involved and pulling these things together. And this, I don't know if it was the quarantine or what, but it's just woken up something in her that's been brewing for a long, long time. And so we appreciate all of you, great brothers. It's good to talk to you tonight. And so, I just want to leave from the faith-based community. We appreciate your feedback. It's something that my wife and I, some of y'all been to my church. We're in the middle of a cornfield. So I don't know who we supposed to serve. But one of the things that we have been put out is we looking at the demographics. I don't think our community needs another food bank, although they are necessary. So we've been throwing around ideas like everybody's online. Let's do GED programs. Let's do something that's going to empower us for the long haul. So I heard what you had to say tonight, and I just want to say I appreciate you, and we're going to pray God's speed, and that the Father in heaven would bless each of you and keep us safe and get us through this. And I said this morning in church. They say this is the new normal. I will say this is new, but this is not normal. So until we get back to normal, we'll appreciate the new things that are even stretching us and having us have these conversations. And I believe Christian said it well. We're dealing with the dichotomy of what's happening. We got COVID-19, the quarantine, and now we have racial injustice. My wife brought up something. She didn't ask me at final mark. She told me to close, but she brought up the cell phones. When I walk down the street, I'm looking. That neighbor has a door cam. That neighbor's got a camera there. When the cops behind me, I know I'm videotaped. So, when I sat down, probably 2 or 3 days later after George Floyd's thing, I'm like, man, doesn't that cop know he's being recorded? Like, it was so much hatred or whatever on the inside of him that he didn't even, pause and say, I'm being recorded. I can be riding down the street and I could be doing just fine, but the cop come behind me, something in me changes, like I'm a criminal, and in the old me, 30 years ago, but like, what you want? What do you, I've been through up against the car once or twice. But so it's a different fight now. So I appreciate the struggle and the part that everyone is playing. Mr. Clayton, thank you for your wisdom, sir. Hallelujah. I appreciate, Mr. Clayton came to our community from the city. He came back home. He rebuilt Kennard, and it didn't cost thousands of dollars. It cost millions of dollars. And one thing about Mr. Clayton, he said, let's do it. Don't worry about the money. I can get the money. I need to be around people like that.
Yes, yes.
I need to get to that place, Trav. That's where I need to go, where I ain't got to worry about the money. It finds me. So I appreciate all of you, and thank you for coming on and proceeding to be with us. Father, I bless you. I praise you, and I thank you now for the gathering of the brethren tonight. I thank you for this time to share and to tell our stories, God, and I thank you, God, that we can magnify the positive change that's happening in our communities, and we can break the stereotypes that all brothers are trying to find themselves. But we found for tonight that have been planted and rooted and are doing what you have destined them to do. So we thank you just for the role models. We thank you for the examples tonight, and we thank you for the mentors and for the voice of reason and for the voice of wisdom, even in this difficult time. And I thank you for the position that you have given us as men, God, where we are called to us lead our communities and even our churches, God. And we're praying that we get in position, God, so that we're not pointing the finger or blaming others, but that we will stand as priests. We will stand as protector. We will stand as provider for our sons and our daughters and our wives. In Jesus' name, amen. Bless you, brothers.
Amen. And we thank you all
Amen.
for being here. We are so excited because the conversation continues. We know that in the natural realm, that whenever a woman is expecting, oftentimes she gets excited to be able to go and get a sonogram, because the sonogram has the unique ability and responsibility to reveal the unknown to the expectant couple. And so we'll be back here with the prophets. We want to know those who are the spiritual sonographers. We know that the shepherds can march with us, and they can be on the front lines with us when it comes to what's happening, in the church's response. And we know that this is a time, and I really like how Matthew Stevenson put it, when it comes to the evangelists who are out there and they're reaping in the harvest. But all of that is impossible if we don't hear from the heart of God. And so we want the prophets to be released on next Sunday at 6 o'clock. We'll be right here on this channel, continuing a conversation on race, shifting it a little bit more, looking at a spiritual perspective. What are the prophets saying? What is heaven saying and releasing in the earth? Because I am a full believer that we have dual citizenship.
Amen.
And while I am here to represent the kingdom of heaven, I want to know what heaven has already ordered, the steps that he's ordered, that we can legislate here in the earth. For whatever we bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever we loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So we want heaven to back us up, amen, with legislative authority, judicial authority, and executive authority. So we got the prophets coming, and then we're going to be gathering some pastors, amen, and young people. So the conversation will continue. And brothers, I would love to have you back, that we can discuss some identity and talk more social issues and really dig in a little bit deeper. I love you all. Thank you all, those who are joining us. Don't forget to like this, hit that share button, and send this wisdom from these Black men in America. Hallelujah to God. Thank you again.